Because we're losing good content here.
Well, we're losing
talking about kung fu milfs and stuff. I don't know.
Yes,
we're losing content. I'm not going to put a value judgment on the quality of said content, but we are in fact losing content. All right, so let's welcome the audience to the penultimate episode of Mentioned in Dispatches for this season. Again, it's tough to keep the numbers straight anymore at this point in the season. So we're just going to roll with it. And longtime listeners know that not at least once, but every year in the fall, one of the things we have is a very shouty and angry and rant-filled, unassembled bag of parts as we yell about the Charlies, generally making fun of whatever happened to accidentally win something it shouldn't have. But the problem with this year is twofold. And Jim, we have spoken about this. We have two problems this year. The first one is the Charlies aren't actually going to be out this year. We're not going to know who won. The new year.
We'll see.
The second problem.
What?
We'll see.
Are you breaking news right here?
No, I'm not promising a date, but we're trying to get it out this year.
Oh. Yeah. So the second problem, as you could guess by the voices joining us here on the podcast, is it's really tough to get into some shouty, angry rant about how dicked up the Charlies are when one of your good friends is running the damn program now.
I disagree completely.
How am I supposed to reconcile this?
That's your problem as the host. You've got to make this confrontational somehow.
Please.
That's what that's what Jim's here for.
Yeah, that's why I brought Jim along.
Yeah, Jim, you'll be happy to know that next year we're adding 13 Napoleonics categories.
Best Napoleonic game without a map.
Best Napoleonic game with hat. Best
it's a 20-year
Napoleonic
period.
game sans hat.
It's a 20-year period, Gary. 20 years.
I'm aware.
So it's best game per year.
One per year.
Best maybe. Napoleonic game featuring Davout. Best Napoleonic game not featuring Davout. Best game about the hypothetical sword fight between Bernadotte and Davout.
Oh, best game ever. What are you talking about? That's a Sure Charlie's Hall of Fame game.
It's a Ty Bomba design.
He's gonna Photoshop himself into a picture at Osborne Esslin.
Jim's gonna want 4 categories alone on best games of varying scales on the 1809 campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, correct.
Mm-hmm. Jim, have we seen a game on the 1809 campaign come out in the last 5 years?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I'm waiting for Kevin to redo his.
That doesn't stop we all are playing them all.
Yeah, no, I mean
both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and they're both Kevin Zucker designs, right?
Of course, because they're all Kevin Zucker designs.
Right. You know, he kind of his 1809.
We're going to have a category for best Napoleonic game designed by Kevin Zucker, and then another category, best Napoleonic game designed by Kevin Zucker while wearing a funny hat.
Kevin actually isn't into the whole hat thing. He's a serious dude. I've often wanted to have a game, best game designed by Kevin Zucker that's still in the shrink wrap, and it's a forgery.
There's best Kevin Zucker Napoleonic design, best Napoleonic design inspired by Kevin Zucker, best Napoleonic design by someone trying to rip off Kevin Zucker,
best oil painting of Kevin Zucker.
You guys make fun.
Creepiest cardboard stand-up of Kevin Zucker.
Is it weird to have a stand-up of Kevin Zucker?
A little bit.
Okay.
So Jim, it's only weirder if it's laying down.
I'll make sure I stand it up before I turn on the camera.
All right. So as the listeners have probably surmised at this point, we're only nominally staying on topic about the Charlies, but it is what it is. So first of all, Gary, did you lose a bet? Like, how did you end up in charge?
It sure feels like it, doesn't it? So, as we probably have established for those who listen to the shows over the last couple of years, the Charles S. Roberts Awards came back in 2020 for the awards year 2019. So games released in 2019. And there were a lot of issues with the categories, with the nominees, with the winners, the winner. Some of that advice, I'll call it advice, meaning bitching, was taken into account in some category modifications that happened in 2021 for the awards year 2020, which is the last one. but there's still like a lot of structural problems that are obviously still there, and one of those structural problems is the absolutely insane process for determining who the nominees are. And then so the 2022 awards for awards year 2021, which is the one that we've just announced the nominees, process just wasn't happening. And I don't know that it's more complicated necessarily than that process is just not workable. It's just incredibly impractical and required an enormous outlay of time and effort by several people to make to get that done, and not only get it done, but get it done inside a reasonable time. And I think we had I don't know, when did we make the announcement? About 2 weeks ago? Feels like about 2 weeks ago. So it would have been
by the time people are listening to this, it'll be, a little more than that, but sure.
Very early November, we made the announcement of the nominees and launched at the same time the final ballot. And that's open now as of right now. So, Brad, if you want to put the link to the ballot, just depending on when this is going live, the ballot will be live till December 10th. So, by all
there's
means,
still time for people to vote. The ballot is linked to this episode.
There you go.
All good war gamers should go vote. All bad war gamers should, vote for whatever Jim tells them to vote for.
All bad war gamers should definitely vote for U-Boat, which is not
in the category of best map.
Right, in the category of best map when it doesn't have a map. Did you see the change that was made? Now, so I came in after actually the nominating ballot process had wrapped up, right? So I took the position that we couldn't make any changes to the categories or the process now, because these are the categories that people voted on in the nominating round. So for this year, we're kind of stuck with that. For next year, we'll reevaluate. But thanks to the pretty exhaustive and intense process that we undertook to turn the nominating ballots into a set of nominees, I think we do have problems with the categories aside. We have a solid set of nominees that all belong in their categories. They all released in 2021, despite whoever those Trench Club people are's efforts to create confusion about that. Because as soon as we did this, they launched a new Trench Club Kickstarter, and people are like, "What do you mean? That's not even out yet." And no, this is the 2021 Trench Club, totally different product. Thank you, Trench Club people.
The new one technically is called Trench Club Legacy.
Yeah, so, right. But that's still I got questions from the populace about that.
Yeah.
So I was asked, there was apparently some insane person said, "Hey, Gary would be a great sucker / person to take over this thing." And a conversation, with several people on the board and, involving Roger McGowan and some other folks happened, and it was extended to me. And I said, sure, I got plenty of free time, right? I can manage this. Fortunately, The good news is that the big lift for 2021 awards year is now over. It'll be very easy to figure out who the final winners are. We'll have to do some work with the data, because I know some people who voted twice. Don't vote twice. Just vote once, but vote, right? So we gotta, we'll have to be a little careful with that. But other than that, the big lift is over with, and the goal for next year, we want to hit the ground running in January and get the process started, so it doesn't take 11 months to complete. And we're starting to have those discussions about how the processes are going to have to change, some changes to the categories to make them clearer, right? We had some issues, which Jim will love this actually. Jim, have you seen the game Lavende Against the Odds? Okay.
Yep.
Cool looking game, by the way. I haven't played it yet, but I ordered it. Which category does that fit in?
It's Napoleonic.
Yeah, it is. Except that, does it have Napoleon or one of his marshals in it?
Nope.
It does.
Well, it's got his well, that's true.
Yeah. Augereau's in it.
Yeah.
So,
right.
And there's a counter for Napoleon in it. So what category does it go into? Because that turned out to be the criteria. The criteria was...
Whoa. What is
the criteria for Napoleonics includes Napoleon or one of his marshals. And I understand the impetus behind changing the category in that way, but basically that turned it into an obscure historical fact categorization, right? Where if you happen to know that Augereau got sent to the Vendée to put down the rebellion, and or that Napoleon got ordered to the Vendée to put down the rebellion and said, no, I'm not doing that, and went AWOL for like 3 months until he showed up back to Paris.
That's kind of okay. Go ahead.
Right.
Yeah. Never mind.
So it's there's still category problems, and I'm still going to take a position that there's too many categories for stuff that we shouldn't be giving awards. We shouldn't be giving Charles S. Roberts awards away for anyway. But those discussions are starting to happen, and it's not going to be just me making those decisions by fiat.
What is Napoleon? Why is there a Napoleon counter?
Because do you not want, in that scenario, do you not want the alternate history opportunity? What if Napoleon went
that's
there?
What they're doing.
I
Okay,
mean,
got it.
yeah,
Okay.
I would never have considered designing a game on that topic without having a Napoleon counter in it.
So the guy who gets really chuffed about the fact that there's like World War III alt history games in Europe is totally fine with the alt history of Napoleon flipping sides on this rebellion.
Well, that's a minor aspect to the game, but it raises a question about what category a specific game that kind of falls in the wibbly wobbly zone between categories fits in, right?
Well, can I ask the more fundamental question as I pull it down off my shelf?
Sure.
Was that not released in the ATO annual in 2019?
That's what it says, but ATO says it was released in 2021. We talked to them. I'm aware of that.
Oh, okay.
It didn't nominate it anyway, so it's not actually a problem as far as we're concerned in this particular case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I mean, come on, Jim. You don't expect games that are supposed to be released in 2019 to be released in 2019, do you? You've been doing this for too long. You know better than that.
So this brings up the question that if somebody designs some alt history something or other that has the French throw their lot in with the U.S. in the War of 1812 and send an expeditionary force to New Orleans to help reinforce Andrew Jackson and includes one of Napoleon's marshals, does that become eligible for the Napoleonics category?
I think it fits better. There is no good category for something like that, for that particular Thai Bomba design. So,
it's a theme, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, but I mean, Napoleon or one of his marshals. It does also have to be set between 1793 and 1815, right?
So War of 1812, Battle of New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things that we yelled about in 2020 was Dawn's Early Light, which I think got nominated, and it's a War of 1812 game. Does this belong in the Napoleonics category? I don't think so.
Well, but at the time, I think that one was only time bound and didn't have the additional stipulation of Napoleon, one of his marshals.
Right. And that's problematic because you're calling it a Napoleonic category when it's got only peripherally related to Napoleonic topics. And there's other stuff happening on the planet between 1793 and 1815 too that have nothing to do with Napoleon. So a lot of tweaking and fine tuning needs to be done to those category definitions. There's a long precedent for a couple of things. If you look back at the history of the Charles S. Roberts Awards and think about what awards were given in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s up to 2013 when they stopped. And there's ample precedent for changing and for historic like periodized categories, right? It started out as best game, and then it went to best World War II game, best pre-World War II game, and best post-World War II game. Which is fine on the face of it, but then you got to think about how many games fall into each of those categories, right? Post-World War II is a far smaller category than World War II, but even of pre-World War II, right? Because that's a lot of space, right? A lot of temporal real estate's taken up by before 1939.
Well, but I think at the time at which they were putting those categories out there, the available games may have fairly easily sort of fallen into those in roughly equal proportion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so the point is that it's not like the categories have never been changed. I mean, the categories changed significantly between the last 2 years, and we expect them to change again for next year, and we'll see what that looks like. I want to have that decided by the end of the year, so like I said, we can hit the ground running. I'm very pleased with the work that we did under pretty significant time constraints. Like I said, it wasn't just me, or it would have been another 2 weeks, but of going through those like open text field nominating ballots. It's and that a lot of people just put trash in there. Games that released in 1981. It's like, okay, well, sorry, we tried to retain voter wishes whenever we could. So and this happened is somebody submitted a Napoleonic game, but they put it in the World War II category. Well, that's not a valid vote, but if they had an open slot in the Napoleonic category, we moved it there. So we tried to keep as many, we tried to recognize the excellent games that were released in 2021. And I think we've succeeded at that. And we tried to retain as much of the of voter input as we could. And I think we succeeded at that too, but maybe we're not 100% at that. But a revised nominating process will address those issues for next year, such that it's not 80 man hours worth of work anymore to figure out who the nominees are going to be. And everybody's got a day job, right? The vast budget of the Charles S. Roberts Awards does not include funds to send me to Cancun to do the announcements on Christmas. So, I
don't know that pocket lint gets you that far.
Yeah, everybody's got a day job here. So it wasn't going to be with that in mind. And it was about 80 man hours. It was going to take a matter of weeks at absolute minimum to do it. And if it had just been me, it would have taken 2 months.
Yeah, I think everybody understands that this is a transitional year for the Charlies, particularly that it was started under one leadership regime, and there was a regime change in the middle there. There was a coup.
Well, I hope not. And that was actually like something I said. It's like, look, I don't want to force anybody out, right? I don't want to get in a pissing contest with somebody else over leadership here. If that person has left, okay. But if they're trying to stay, then I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And that situation was clarified. So we got that. We got the nominating ballot data, messy as it was more than enough to give us, I think, a solid set of nominees.
Yeah. I know that years ago when I ran the Reader's Choice Awards for another website, we had 2 rules basically.
For those people.
Yes. One is the readers had to nominate. Like, we as the staff were not throwing our own recommendations into the voting, that the readers had to nominate it. And we had a public record of that because you could go back and look in the forums where we had an open thread starting at the beginning of the year. Whatever you nominate, we're going to include. The other rule was it had to actually be released in that year. So that took a little bit of research, just confirming things were released in that year. If you nominated it, it went on the ballot. If you didn't nominate it, it didn't go on the ballot. And based on what was nominated, we did change categories a little bit from year to year. Some years we had enough sort of generic family game type of nominees to put them in their own category.
Best game on the War of Jenkins' ear.
Yeah. Other times we had to consolidate a few things, but we also had both digital and tabletop. So on the digital side, we would separate out like the RTS and arcade type things from the turn-based strategy ones. We put, if we had enough nominees, we'd put the flight sims in their own category. If we didn't, then the flight sims got collapsed into something else. There was often times once the voting went live, we'd get people complaining, why wasn't this game, one of the options? Well, because nobody nominated it. Here's the link to the forum. Go look at what was nominated. If nobody nominates it, it doesn't go on the ballot. If somebody does, it goes on there somewhere. And we had both the digital and tabletop game of the year where we put literally every game. We didn't put the expansions of the DLCs, but literally every standalone game went on that list together. One year somebody nominated one of the Euro Truck Simulator or something like that. They ended up getting grouped with some of the
Euro Truck Simulator. Get Zilla Blitz on here. We got to have him on to talk about that mod.
But it went in the category with the other sort of family and general interest games for the individual game, but it still got thrown in the list with everything else that was nominated for as a standalone game for Game of the Year. It got like 4 votes for Game of the Year.
I hear it's good if you're into that.
Yeah. Well, it might have. I think it was the year that Command Modern Air Naval Ops was released or something.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of steamrolled a couple of categories. But
you'd think.
Yeah, but in any event, that we were completely transparent about the fact that this thing was 100% a pure popularity contest.
Mm-hmm.
We made no bones about it. We put no value judgment on the quality of the nominees. If you nominated it and it was eligible based on the year it was released, it went in the voting somewhere. And if it wasn't eligible because the year, then we'd kick it out. But otherwise, man, it was in there somewhere. And we didn't care if people stuffed the ballot box. It was always it was the baseball all-star game, right? It was 100% popularity contest. We never pretended otherwise, and people learned to accept it for what it was. It also made our job a lot easier because we could always blame the public, right? These aren't our choices. This is a reader's choice.
Well, yeah, that's true, and I'm, don't be shocked to hear me say that about some of the nominees or even winners. I mean, I'm one of very small number of people who was able to look at the data, so I have, I won't, but I could, I know who's in the lead in some of these categories, and they're sometimes not the ones I voted for. So in fact, quite often they're not the ones I voted for, but my vote's just not any more valid than anybody else. One of the, you're talking about your People's Choice Awards, which I think just from the name tells people what kind of award that it is, right? The name Charles S. Roberts, right? This is the guy that literally founded our hobby with Tactics 1 in 1954, I believe. Started Avalon Game Company at the time, later to be Avalon Hill, and then later to be, of course, absorbed by the parasites at Hasbro.
You have the guy with the von Reiswitz avatar, and you're talking about Charles S. Roberts being the founder of all of this.
Well, I know I'm not talking to Jim here, right? So, well, that's fine too, but I mean, in terms of the hobbyist,
I know, as a hobby, right? Not as a thing.
Right. I mean, von Reiswitz isn't selling his stuff on the shelf at Target, right? So, or KB Toys, I suppose.
Don't be hurtful. He could be.
I'm just saying that would be. I'll tell you what. If there was a Kriegspiel set that showed up on the shelf at Target, I would probably buy it.
I would probably
$19.99.
Probably.
I'd buy two just to try and make sure that it was successful enough that Target would keep stocking that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, but the kind of the mission, the core mission of the Charles S. Roberts Awards is and always has been to recognize excellence in conflict simulation. Historically, that's meant not just the games themselves, but some of the peripheral things to the games, analysis articles and magazines and computer games, which are not in and of themselves invalid as simulations. But at the same time, right, we've got a lot of attention being paid to computer games, for instance, and a couple of years ago, we had like 6 computer game. I don't know if it was that many, but there were several computer game categories.
More than there needed to be for the
right.
Charles
And I just don't know that. And again, this isn't going to be me making these decisions. We're going to talk about it and then have votes and stuff. Imagine that. But, it's going to be my position that we need to get the core mission right of recognizing excellence in conflict simulations and showing people by the nominees and the winners that we put forward that these really are, even if you disagree about the winner, there isn't an unworthy game on this list anywhere. On this list of nominees.
So we're not going to sit here and go through every one of the nominees and all the different categories, because we'll do that when we actually talk about the winners.
Oh, we're not
in next season. Now we'll do it when we talk about the winners, because
I don't think we need to actually, because I think the whole thing is, I mean, we might disagree about categories and stuff like category construction, but as the categories are currently construed, I don't think there's really much of a problem with anything that's on here. And that was the bulk of our content in the last 2 years was us complaining about this game or that game and how it doesn't belong in this category and how it's garbage and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that we've always done though is that we would talk about the games that were in each of the categories with the winner, and hey, was this the right winner for this category, or do we think this other game should have won, or what do we think about the nominees? Is there something that was nominated that wasn't nominated that should have been, et cetera, et cetera.
So that kind of conversation, and I'm pretty sure I said this in at least one, maybe both of the last 2 years, is entirely healthy. I think I am looking forward to hearing what people think about that once we announce.
Yeah. So I want to hold off on that until we get to the winners, where we actually talk about the ones in each of the categories. But I do want to ask, in terms of the ones that actually made it into the nominee cut. Obviously, there's some quality control you had to do to sort of weed out the 1981 games, or to Napoleon did not in fact fight in World War II, that kind of stuff to clean up. If I'm looking at best early gunpowder board war game, and there's 4 nominees in there, were those simply the 4 that were nominated the most? Were they the only 4? Was there
so
12
no, there was,
and you guys picked which 4? How did you get to the ones that are actually the nominees in each of them?
Well, the process is just a nominating vote. This is just numbers. So so taking early gunpowder as our example. So the current charter seems to imply that you shouldn't have more than 4 nominees in any category. So what happens there? And it's all votes. So one of these 4 games had the most votes, one had the second most votes, one had the third most votes, so on and so forth. But what happens if you have a 3-way? If you have 4 nominees nominees, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then you have a 3 or 4 way tie for number 5. How do you handle that? So those were decisions that we had to make. We were going to have 8 nominees for this category. I wasn't comfortable with that, but there was at least one case, World War II, where we did feel that it was safe to include an extra nominee. We have 6 nominees. Most of the categories have at least 3 nominees. Some have 4. Most have 5, and one has 6.
Yeah.
So let me ask Jim having looked at this list, is there anything that screams to you, this is outrageous, and I am going to stamp my little feet now?
Would you? It's funny what I've been doing. While I've been listening to your comments, I've been kicking around with the online to sort of see the face of the chart. And I realized, how do I put this gently? The former management is the dominant social media presence.
Is it?
Yeah. As you search for the Charlies.
Oh, on Google?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that might be the case.
That's largely, I think, at this point, a function of the relative short time that the new management position has been live. That only so many things have had, an opportunity to even link to it, or I don't want to say manipulate like it was an intentional manipulation of it, but to impact the Google algorithm that will eventually point stuff towards the current management's.
Yeah, and so I don't want to get into much because there's a lot I don't even know about exactly what went down here, but I guess I'll just say that the new leadership did not receive credentials from the old leadership regarding the Twitter account or the Instagram account or the Facebook account or the web page. So we had to start all those from scratch. And I think, frankly, we're doing pretty good at that. The Facebook group, which is intended as a place where people can go to talk about the Charles S. Roberts Awards, right? It's not just there to kind of put a footprint on the moon, right? It's there for people to talk about, and we'll get into more of that as we are able to time wise. But we've already got over 400 followers on the new Twitter account. I'm good enough with Twitter, since that's my primary social media platform, to make sure there's posts scheduled to, show people what the nominees are and tell people how to get to the ballot and all that stuff.
Maintain the flow of content.
So, that having been said, let me say this first, because I've wanted to make a record of this from my own views. No matter what I say in the future, this is true. It is always easier to tear down than to build.
Sure.
Building is the hard thing. Creating is the hard thing.
Tell me about it.
and that's true even if the people that I agree there's no sense in looking back, but that's true even if you have cooperation and a smooth handoff. I'll just say that much.
Yeah, and it wasn't some incredible trauma, but we didn't exactly the handoff was not absolutely optimal either. The important takeaway is to move forward here.
Yes.
And build, get the 2020 awards done, and then get that behind us, and then start improving the process so that we can build this thing into the future, and so that in say 2 or 3 or 4 years, I can hand it off to somebody and say, okay, here's how this works. You're in charge now. Because I don't want to do this for 10 years, frankly.
Yeah, no, and it's a great website.
I'll do it from Cancun if
the money is there. Yeah.
Right.
If the money is there. No, so my point only being, whatever other criticisms come out, I think the presence is better. I think the look and feel is better. These categories are always, you're going to have a problem of taxonomy at some point. I think that's inevitable. I guess I just as I went through them, I'll go to the one that I love, Napoleonics. I don't know what I think about Coalition. And I'm not judging it. I'm just.
So let me ask you, because this is your baby, right?
Yeah.
So is there a Napoleonic game that you think was worthy of a nomination that's not on that list?
No, that was my first standard. I had to come with that first. And so, no, I think these are, with the exception of Coalition, which I'll be direct, I think it's a Euro. I just don't know, as I think it's a war game that way.
That's a question. There's a lot of these soft questions that we got to develop some kind of answer for, right?
Right.
Because we've been arguing about what's a war game, this is a war game, this isn't a war game for the last 30 years, right? Till we decided that these other types of games are different from war games somehow. And
I'm sure it's been more than 30. We've just only been paying attention that long.
It's in my but I mean, remember, at the time, they put Gary Gygax in the Hall of Fame as a war game designer, right? This is
of course, dude has published war game designs.
Well, but were his war games? I mean, he's in there for D&D, man. He's not in there for Guide on Games. Don't give up the shit. So
no, come on, Alexander.
Okay, but I mean, look at
pretty
the weight of it's a classic. That's fine, but I mean, is that as a strictly board war game?
No,
I don't want to say Gary doesn't belong in there. The point is that at the time, that's considered like an arm or appendage of wargaming, right? And there's legit reasons for that. How do you address that, right? I think we have to have some kind of answer for that. How do we?
I love the way you phrase that. It's more a question to be answered than anything that's obvious. I'm not gonna throw sticks on it, and I like throwing sticks. But I'm not gonna throw sticks on it.
You just spent the entire live broadcast pissing all over live conventions, man.
Yeah, because they suck. See, they made Gary sick too.
Yeah.
That hug you got, you know why you're sick? Hugs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The doctor from Florida that gave me a hug, I've known for several years now. Great guy. I probably got it.
There you go. It was
more likely that I got it from my wife when I got home.
The only one, honestly, that I looked at and I went, okay, we're going there, is over in your sci-fi fantasy board game. A game we've actually played on the Saturday Night Fights, Billion Suns. That's a minis game.
Yeah, there's precedent for minis games getting Charles S. Roberts nomination.
Is that door officially open?
That's a question we should answer. We should have an answer for that, right? There's no answer for that right now. It is not a topic that's addressed. The topic that we've brought up the last 2 years of reprints and new editions, that is not addressed, except in one case where it's specifically in the current category definition, reprints and new editions are specifically excluded from War Game of the Year. Why only there? I don't know. Do we need to address that, right? And we're always going to have problems, right? There's always going to be questions. So you got two, what's a good example that came out this year? So there's the one obvious example that I can think of that came out this year is NATO, the Cold War Gone Hot from Compass.
Yeah, there's two Compass.
A fine game. Yeah, but that's that's a good example. So there's Third World War. That's a 2022 release though. Okay.
No, that's
so it's not in the running for this awards. And it's both packages are fabulous. I have them both. I'm very happy with that. I don't even like that topic. I think it belongs with the dwarves and the elves. But but those are great packages. Now, Third World War is basically a straight reprint with better graphics and some improved markers and stuff, right? NATO is almost
and everything in one box. That's
true too.
The big advantage of Third World War is they put it all in the same damn box.
They did, and it's a big box. But NATO, the Cold War Goes Hot is a complete redesign of the 1983 Bruce Maxwell game from Victory Games, right? It's a different game. How do we address that, right? Is one eligible, but the other one's not eligible? We've got to answer those questions, or at least be prepared to come up with a justification for how we arrived at decisions that we arrived at, right? And all the ballot decisions, and we had hundreds of lines of this at the end. We meticulously logged everything and said, this is, here's what we did here. We moved this nomination. This doesn't fit in this category, but they had an open slot. We moved it over here, whatever we did. This game came out in 1981. We can't nominate that. Advanced Civilization, by the way, which is a fine game, but add-ons and supplements, do those qualify for other categories that aren't the expansion or supplement category? Not clear.
So like the artwork category, is that what you're thinking?
Could be. Yeah, that could be. Whatever. I mean, there's nothing that says Undaunted Reinforcements can't be nominated. Right now, there's nothing that says that can't be nominated as a best World War II game, because it's not defined that it's got to be a standalone game. There's just like nothing for that. So how do we do that? And then how do we let people know? I mean, not everybody's going to be an expert is going to read the charter, right? We can't. That's not a reasonable expectation. But how do we, have some transparency too, to tell people what the process looks like, even if there's information that we keep behind the curtain. We still want to give people some insight as to how it works. And I said this, I forget where, it might have been at Compass Expo. I challenge anybody to read the current charter on the old web page and tell me how the process works based on their reading of that charter, because it's not in there. Yeah. It basically says, in a couple of different places, and the board shall take care of the Charles S. Roberts Awards. And there's nothing more to it than that. There's nothing really about process. There's nothing about how do we make changes to the charter? How do you get on the board? How do you get off the board? How does any of that work? There's like nothing on that. What does the board do? Nobody knows.
They apparently make decisions.
Or do they? Because it doesn't say that.
Well, but if other places it says the board shall, then the board gets to do those things. I think so to react to a couple of your points, I think you're pointing out that there are information deficiencies all over the current process.
Sure.
Is absolutely valid. That's a valid criticism, whether you're in charge of it or not, because we've talked about this over the past several years. I think acknowledging that those made for some difficult decisions this year double as the acknowledgement of, oh crap, we have problems to solve going forward. But I think enough people, if they don't, then they rapidly should understand that you picked up this process in stride, and there's only so much you can change while it's going on, that you've got to kind of finish what's already been started. Yet, yes, the house has its basic framing done and a couple of rooms in dumb places, right? You're using the bathroom as a hallway off of which all the bedrooms live, which is silly, but that's what's already been framed out. So you're going to finish building that house before you move on to the next one that you're going to design a little more intentionally and with a little better forethought. And I think we'll get there. And I think it's going to make it a lot harder to be all yelly, screamy, shouty about dumb things in there, because ideally...
Oh, to time. Whoa. When did Brant suddenly become the dewy-eyed, oh, you sweet summer child?
Well, we all just hug it out.
No. Here's the thing.
What the hell did you just say?
We're going to have more than enough to yell about with the nominees and who ends up winning, because some chuckleheads will end up stuff in the ballot box about dumb stuff. But
Okay.
No, we'll find stuff to yell about. It's just, the fact that outright parody items were nominated in serious categories, probably not going to be one of them. Unless, Gary, I did want to ask.
Don't worry, we're fixing that too.
Just parody category.
There isn't currently, and that isn't something that's on my notes. However, you'll be relieved to know that Ryan Heilman broke the awards last year, and this year we're putting them to work. So,
as the Armchair Dragoons march into the 9th season of their podcast, Mentioned in Dispatches, we need to make time to thank our Patreon supporters who pledged at the regimental patron level. So a heartfelt thanks to Patrick Garrity, Mike Quigley, Joseph Knoll, Hethwill Wargames, Robert, Kevin Bertram, Chet Bell, Treb Curry, Staggerwing, and Patrick Mullen for their support of the Armchair Dragoons and helping us to bring you the best strategy gaming content on the web. You too can sign up as a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/armchairdragoons.
I've been editing your charter in my head. You know I do that for a living, right?
Okay, I should send it to you then, actually, because I've got a complete new draft written.
Remember that the crap that Jim edits has to be enforced by some, officer of the law.
I was going to say,
can you provide armed thugs?
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually do on occasion have to send the things I write to actual sworn officers of the law and go, if I write this, how buggered are you? Or how mad are you at me? And so with that in mind, I'm going to give somebody a class in rudimentary capitalization, but I move on.
Oh, you'll be mad about me then.
Yeah, I'm big hug.
There's a lot of special capitals in that.
Yeah, if you give Jim a document and ask him to edit it, it will come back in the language of bureaucracy.
It will. I do wonder though, and this is, and I've got a number of other questions that are more technical, but that the one that bears here, the line is, I do like also. This reminds me very much of the Monty Python philosopher sketch with the Australian Outback guys. Rule number 1. That is no rule number 6. Rule number 1. Miniatures games can be nominated for eligible categories other than computer games.
Yeah.
2 things. Number 1. Rules. Is that intended to say rule sets?
That's a great point.
I know where this is going.
That's a great point. Honestly, so I mean that's a decision to make. I mean, do we want to recognize potentially miniatures rules? Should miniatures rule sets get their own category? I think that's I have no idea how many miniatures rule sets come out in any given year. You have much better visibility on that than me.
Yeah, and look, I am not coming up to you like the March Hare and encouraging you to go down the rabbit hole with me. Because I will only say that you have these above the line games, and let's just say rules. I'm just going to talk about rules for a second. You've got above the line rules, which I would think, like the Two Fat Lardies and Sam Mustafa and Warlord that do, bound, color, printed edition. And then you got Bob in his basement with a mimeograph machine. Yes, he's still got a mimeograph, okay? And he's printing it out and
he stole it from a guy named Gutenberg.
Yes. Right, and it's doing
it up at a high school, like thrift sale.
Yeah, it's got that purple ink.
Yeah, it smells great when it's all done. It's got that smell that the stupid kids today will never appreciate when it was still a little bit wet when your teacher handed it to you. But all that being true. You've got such an incredible range that I don't know. But yes, I do wonder whether rule sets are permitted. I just raised the question. But secondly, what miniatures games can be nominated for eligible categories, which is unnecessary, other than computer games? What are you trying to exclude? Be specific.
I don't know.
But I don't think Gary wrote those, so you're asking him to defend someone else's work.
Well, and they took a lot of flack about category, stuff in the wrong categories in the past. But the problem wasn't solely category construction and rules of eligibility or lack thereof. Mm-hmm. The problem was also the Wild West nomination process, where anybody could put whatever they wanted in those three text fields. And people would put in non-English characters that then when I got it, that was garbled ASCII, and sometimes I could figure out what the hell they were talking about. Sometimes I couldn't. We got games that didn't exist. Now, people nominated Tanto Manta that's not out yet, and it's November of 2022, and I would bet you $5 it ain't coming out till 2023. So that's a huge component of the problem that I think the weird language was an attempt to address, but it addresses the symptom rather than the fundamental issue. And it doesn't help if the person that's voting didn't read the charter, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, we want to make those guidelines available to somebody. So when we get the comment, and we will, that, hey, why didn't such and such a game get nominated? We could say, well, here's a rule that's, we have eligibility guidelines for that this is why, right? Or why it was included, right? So,
okay. All right. And I guess related there, directly related to that then.
Dead air.
What is, sorry, this is just me having a horrible.
That's okay. You're just giving Brant more work. It's all good.
Yeah, that's right.
Truncate silence is a one-button click.
Achievement. Is achievement one of the individual awards? Because you delimit, I can only vote for one achievement, but I can submit 3 games / individuals per award category.
That's a great question. So the nomination process, what I believe that's trying to say, and I believe it is probably not saying it particularly clearly. In the nomination process, you have 3 text fields under Napoleonics, and you can put whatever you want in those 3 text fields under Napoleonics.
Cool.
That's what that's trying to refer to. But you are limited to 1 ballot, and we actually didn't find too many duplicate ballots in the nominating ballot. There was somebody that submitted 3 ballots, but that could just as easily have been a mistake where they didn't remember that they had voted already. All the ballots were the same except for 1 entry.
So where I read voting on all achievements shall be limited to 1 vote per person, what I really should be reading is each person may only submit 1 ballot.
I believe that is the intention behind that guideline, yes.
Okay.
And that's certainly how we interpret it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that anybody's going to end up in a court of law having to define what is.
Christ, I hope not.
No, actually, there's any lawyer that does what I do for a living will tell you that there's extensive case law on the difference between may and shall.
Oh no, I have no doubt about that.
That's so, and I'm not asking you. I just I think that one of the things that Gary has done a lot of and is very commendable. I don't often say nice things. I'm going to say nice things.
Oh boy.
I'm
going to cry.
Is very commendable. He's exposing himself. No, he is exposing the back room.
Last time I did this, I spent the night in the drunk tank.
But you expose yourself one time. It's the scene in Casino where Bob De Niro and Joe Pesci by turns walk you through the counting room and you can see how it all works. It's sort of the same thing. It's like, all right, look, we don't want you to stay. You don't have to linger here. We're going to do the work. But in case you're wondering, here's how we're going to count. Here's what's going to count. Here's what's not going to count. And here's how we're going to regard you bozos as trying to cheat or screw it up or whatever. Because if nothing else, that transparency grants a reasonable level of assurance for something that, as you have correctly observed, pays nothing.
Vast riches.
The vast certainty of knowing you've done the right thing. I guess it grants. It gives a reasonable level of certainty, parallel or tantamount to the recompense that you're doing the very best you can to stand it on a good footing. And that's. Going back to Brant's pie-eyed optimism, I know that despite all these best efforts, there will be some grievance floated, mooted, and argued. But
probably by us.
Oh yeah, very likely. Well, no, honestly, going back to Gary's question that he put, just as I was looking at the nominees, I was looking at the ballot. I'm gonna say it. I don't see anything crazy here. I would tilt my head sideways, as I said, about things like coalition, but that's a rabbit hole, and who really cares? That's not particularly relevant. Vote for it, vote against it if you want. I do think the question of miniatures rules is interesting. How far they're allowed to go and what they're allowed to do. And yeah, of course, I'll say it. I love this game. There is no universe in which Oath is a war game.
Got enough votes.
I know. Well, and look, I love that.
I have honestly.
I love just did.
This is one I have to. I had to get help on. I have no idea what. I can look at the box on BGG, but I don't play that. I don't know what it's about. Does it have miniature? I have no idea. But it got the votes.
No, it is the deepest of rabbit holes. Truthfully, Cole's PAX Pamir is one of my favorite games. Actually, the game I like by him even more is John Company, which is absolutely in my top 10 games of all time. And none of which are war games. The only game he's done that is a war game is Root.
So this brings up the without going down the what is a war game rabbit hole.
Yeah, sorry about
bring
that.
Up the question of where do you differentiate between a war game and a conflict simulation?
Well, what I'm going to say, this is me talking, and I think the position that the Charles S. Roberts Awards is going to end up sitting on is this is a 40-year-old conversation. Mm-hmm. We are not going to solve this question, in 2022, right?
Damn it.
So my take on it is that, and it's going to depend on what the nomination process looks like moving forward, right? Is it an open vote again? Is there a committee? Is there like we ask the publishers to submit games for nomination like Hollywood does? I don't know. It depends. But in any case, we're gonna want to respect the wishes of the people that put the games up for nomination, right? So I don't know that we're gonna be able to take it on this particular question, right? We may have a statement that says something about, we're here to recognize conflict simulations. But it's going to, by the nature of whatever process we land on, end up looking more inclusive of non-war games than a lot of people are going to be comfortable with.
It's going to be Harold's view and not Jim's view.
Well, I don't know. I think it's going to be kind of somewhere in the middle, but Jim's kind of on one extreme side and Harold's kind of on another extreme side. But but it's not going to be up to me. Right. I'm not going to make that call. If we're going to talk about it, however it looks, right? If we have a committee, for example, there'll be a round table where we say, okay, so-and-so wants to put forward this game for, coalition for nomination. Do we think this is something that falls within the purview of the Charles S. Roberts Awards? And we can talk about that. And then if we don't all agree, we can have a vote on it. And that's fine. But as long as there's some kind of process that lets us make those decisions, there's going to be at some level, we're going to end up making case by case decisions in many cases. I don't think there's a way around that particular.
Yeah. I honestly, Jim, I hear you about Oath. 5 parsecs from home also brings up a question of, how much of a war game is that actually?
Well, I was just, it's funny you did that because I love 5 parsecs from home. I think it's fascinating. Now, I'm never going to play it because it's solo.
Yeah.
I think, by the way, I would like, on behalf of me, for the Charles S. Roberts Award to insert 10 demerit points for any solo game. Because they're dirty and bad. But in all seriousness, when you go to the Modifius website for 5 parsecs from home, which is a wonderful game, very well designed, very well received, it is, according to its own description, an RPG light adventure war game experience with miniatures.
Well, Modifius calls a lot of things war games that I think a lot of our audience is going to completely recoil from. And I know this because I hit the Modifius site for Tuesday Newsday every week. And if you go look under what's under war games at the Modifius site, Achtung Cthulhu Skirmish, right? Fallout Wasteland Warfare. 5 parsecs from home is listed under the war games tab at the Modifius site.
5 parsecs is also the distance between Modifius's definition of war games and my definition.
Nice.
And I'm not disagreeing a bit. I'm simply saying that what they categorize as war games and what there are places where war games absolutely includes Iron Kingdoms from Privateer Press, and I'm not sure that's the world that Charles S. Roberts is trying to live in.
Right, and we need to decide what world we're
and honestly, that piece is my only honest concern, and and
that's not settled, right?
And
I've got some ideas, but it's not going to be like I said. I said this at the very beginning. I'm not going to just be the guy that runs everything. Screw that.
Yeah.
I'll put 7,000 hours a year into this thing.
Yeah.
That it
You're the guy
can't
that
work
shares
that way.
the conversation, but not the guy that makes the decisions.
Right. Well, and then it's up to me, right? And then, what happens when I drop dead and the next guy takes, or whoever it is, takes over, and they want to do things completely differently. The point is to have a process, to have a means to amend that process, to have a means to issue clarifications to that process year over year over year, so that we have stability and we know what we're doing, and we can also identify. And I don't mean know what we're doing in the sense of we're doing it right. I mean we understand how our process works.
Yes.
And then we can, when we see that part of that process isn't working the way we think it ought to, be able to go in and make that change. We need a process for that.
Yeah. And
this can't be just, the Banana Republic Awards, right?
Yeah.
And those wouldn't have credibility in any event,
right.
But
because it would just be some dude, right? I mean, it's how much credibility does Grog of the Year have, for example?
None.
Right. I mean, yeah.
God knows who's handing it out. Some kind of drunken Canadian lunatic who.
Yeah. And you could take our word for it as the we're a majority of the Grogs of the Year.
Yeah, I was going to say you have assembled a plural. No, a majority. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no,
I'm the lone scrub that hasn't won that thing. So
yes. But
we're going to stuff that ballot box this year.
I'm not campaigning for it, right? I don't want to be in a club with you guys.
Well, I didn't either. So it's just
I was going to say
I didn't campaign for this. I was just one of the people that voiced really strong opinions about it, and I guess that got noticed.
What was Groucho Marx show?
Jim didn't campaign for Grog of the Year either. We all stuffed the ballot box on his behalf.
Well, what's the line from Groucho Marx? I would never want to be in a club that has me as a member.
Yeah.
But
we marshaled the Dragoons to harangue Dan into giving it to Jim. So
it's true. That is true. Stepping back to the point I was going to make about the awards, look, I'll come up with them. There's the Origins Awards, which are pretty useless. There's the
in our space, completely useless.
Well, I think they're generally useless. To me, that's just horrid. That has become the Golden Globes of awards. It's whoever throws the most money at them.
I was going to say that more the Golden Dingleberries, but
yeah. I mean, it's we all know that those are not sincere. It's they can be bought, and that just so. And there's all these other awards. There's the Dice Tower Awards, which I actually enjoy. I think they're interesting to watch, but they're not ours. These are ours, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are the awards that folks look at and say, what's a good war game? What was the best of wargaming in this year?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing it in better hands, seeing it trying to get onto, and I agree with you. Look, I believe in process. It's fundamental. We're not perfect. We're human beings. We fail every day. That's what we do. It's in our natures. That's why we establish process, to try to grind through all that. But coming to a process, coming to stability, and those definitions and drawing in the space and making it for us so that we have something that we can say, yep, in 2022, these were the good war games. That's important. And I will flash back, and you'll have to dig through it was a very special day for me when Bruce Garrick recorded one of his very rare podcasts these days, his Wild Weasel podcasts, and very directly addressed Marco Arnardo's attempts to expand the definition of wargaming. And he particularly responded to Marco's criticism of traditional wargaming vis-a-vis the contemporary shape, and told him to go have sex with himself.
Mm-hmm. I do recall that particular podcast.
And it's still, I listen to it from time to time. And
it brings you joy.
It really does. Dr. G really went yard for me on that one. And it's kind of the way I feel. It's like, look, go have your own awards. That's great. But these from the beginning, I mean, you've stolen the Origins awards from us. Those are gone. They were ours. You took them. This is still ours. And I'm glad to see it in hands that certainly know what the heck he's talking about.
I don't know who you're talking about.
That'd be you. That would be you. Dante told us false modesty is a sin too.
Oh boy, we're in trouble.
So Gary, this was a conversation that came up the other day with a couple of us sitting around talking about different awards, because now there is a bit of a proliferation, and that's
the thing that I think we have to kind of take notice of. Maybe not in like a press release, but we kind of have to be aware that there's other awards now, right?
Yeah,
and I wonder to what extent that has occurred in response to what the Charlies have been doing for the last 2 years.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yep.
Because quite frankly, that was the primary driving factor behind what we were going to do with the awards that we were trying to get off the ground. And we kind of ran out of steam with the people that were going to be leading the charge for us. But
that's because you can't do it all.
It had a lot to do with it. There's a reason Mastaracon got canceled this year, right? There's only so much of me to go around. One of the questions that came up with regards to the Charlies is something that I actually saw the guys from the old Gamebox forum that was around for a little while, that Enrico and a couple of the other guys had the game box for him. And one of the things they did was they went back over previous years and pulled up older Charlies and said, okay, what did win? What should have won? And so I'm curious. I don't know that this would ever become an official sort of thing with the Charlies, but, sort of the 5-year look back and the 10-year look back, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, did they get it right? And the great example there is, what was the best picture in 1998? According to the Oscars.
Was that the Shakespeare in Love year?
No. That was a year or two later. But what was the movie that won Best Picture? Titanic won Best Picture. The year LA Confidential was hands down the best movie.
Which is a fabulous movie, and which is a better movie than Titanic.
So Shakespeare in Love versus Saving Private Ryan, you could argue about that some. Saving Private Ryan was certainly a better spectacle, but LA Confidential versus Titanic was absolutely no concept.
Well, and this conversation, which is a healthy conversation to have, is not my problem.
Well,
so, by all means, have this conversation.
It is absolutely not your problem. The question is, would or should the Charlies be open to having an avenue to at least do some sort of retrospective discussion around these things? Maybe it's something you do in the 6 months in between, at the 6-month mark between awards, to sort of gin up some additional attention and discussion around the Charlies. Hey, let's go back 15 years and sort of relook at what had won 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Hey, guys, out of these, which ones have stood the test of time? Which ones were a flash in the pan? Which one was the cult of the new and never really held up? And which ones have become classics that didn't win?
I don't know that the awards themselves need to do that. Now, on the other hand, I'll put something else in your head. I don't know how familiar you are with the Hugo Awards, which are for science fiction and really and fantasy too. So there were a number of years right around the time they started, which I believe was 1954 or something like that, where they gave away an award in 1954, and then they stopped for several years. years. Then they gave another set away. Then they stopped for a couple of years. So there were like a number of like golden age years for which no Hugos were given away. Now the Hugos are a public vote, but it's a public vote among the members of the World Science Fiction Convention, right? So you got to buy a membership, which is expensive, to vote for the Hugos.
But that's how the sad puppies tried to stuff the ballot box that year.
Right. Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. That's a separate conversation.
Yes.
But what they did was they started issuing what they called retro Hues for those years that the Hugos had missed. And I think they've stopped doing that now, maybe because they like got all the missing years.
Caught up.
That's possible. So, definitely don't expect anything like that for 2022. I would be willing to have that conversation. I'm going to say that right now we got to get the core mission right before we start talking about that. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea from first principles. And I'm willing to talk about it. I mean, there's precedent for it. Like I said,
2015 or one of those years for which the Charlies didn't.
Where there were no Charlies.
Yeah.
So Gregory M. Smith can finally get his Charles S. Roberts Award, for example, because the Hunters released the first year that they didn't give them away.
Yeah, I think that's one of those ones that it would probably be tough to go away and go back and give the full slate of awards for any one of those retro years. But I think you could probably hit the big 3 or 4 or 5 key categories that folks would care about, right? A game of the year sort of thing.
Best Napoleonic game, of course. So
with and without hats. Yeah.
Right. With and without Kevin Zucker. But not Kevin Zucker would be, just an empty box.
Best square button Napoleonic game, best rounded button Napoleonic game.
Hooah.
Yeah. For those that don't know, the square buttons discussion has been a long running inside joke amongst a certain part of the wargaming community that
may or may not include Jim.
Yeah. I'm pretty certain it includes him. And if you want the rounded square buttons, you need to go north of the wall and go check in with Vance, because he is the guy with the rounded corners on the square button. So the idea of sort of looking back was one that, again, came up in the discussion that we had. I think you're right that it's certainly not part of the core mission of the Charlies, and not trying to sort of shoehorn that in at all. But I thought it was worthy of some form of discussion and didn't know if that was something that you guys wanted to eventually tackle. I think your point about potentially filling in the missing years is probably a better one than the one that we were.
Well, right. Yeah, and I'm just not spending any bandwidth on that right now, right?
Oh, no.
Core mission, right? But yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting idea. The Hugos did it. We could do it, but we got to get 2021 right first, or as right as we can get it, and then 2022 as right as we can get it, and then 2023 as right as we can get it. And I anticipate having to make adjustments every year, right? They might be big adjustments. They might be because this didn't work, or they might be small adjustments and just fine tuning. And when we've reached the fine tuning stage, then I think we'll be willing. And I don't know how long that's going to take. I'd like to say we're going to get a large chunk of the way there in 2022 for the 2022 awards year. That is, so in 2023. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'll be happy to have that conversation at some point down the line. I think that's something you could do. Have a retro Charlies. Sure.
So you mentioned 22 and 23, and so right now we're working on the awards for game year 2020.
So what we are in 20. Here's the terminology I'm using. Okay, and I'm trying to be consistent with this. We are in 2022. It is currently 2022. It is November 15th, 2022.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say we're nearly not in 2022.
Yeah, exactly. We are working on the awards year 2021, which happens in 2022. So but there's no terminology for that. And it does potentially, as I think Jim's going to see reading the existing rules or non-rules, as the case may be, that leads to that lack of clear terminology, I think, has led to confusion and maybe some bad nominees too.
So I was referring to it as game year, the year in which the game was released.
Right. 2021 is the year we're currently working on.
Game year 2021. Mm-hmm. And we're very nearly in 2023 by the time we find out who wins. You've got game year 2022 that you're going to have to do fairly quickly in order to get game year 2023 started on time, right? It's like all those sports seasons when the pandemic got in the way and suddenly we had to cram a sports season in real quick in order to start the next one on time.
So it is my firm intention.
January here.
To make this process not take 11 months, because there's no reason for it to take 11 months. Now, some people will say, and they're not wrong, that, hey, some of these are big games. How have people had time to play them all?
Yeah.
Well,
Third
not
winter,
everybody
you need
that
11
votes is
weeks
going to
to
have
set
played
up.
them all. That's an unreasonable expectation. We're asking people to get to vote. We're not asking them to become playtesters on all 60 nominees. That is not going to happen. That's not a realistic expectation, and that's unfortunate. But that's just the way it is. It doesn't matter if we wait till November to give the awards out. It's still going to be the case. I mean, the Monster Game folks are, they get a good game in there. New game shows up in, whenever it shows up. Could show up in January, and they say this is going to the top of the play queue right now because it's awesome. When do they start playing it? 2 years later. So, yeah. I mean, we can't catch that, right? We just have to be aware that we can't catch that. So that
shows up in January, and they're still setting it up in March.
Well, that's the other thing, is that guy who keeps releasing games in that window between December 15th and January 15th, and you know who you are. That's inconvenient, but we got that cleared up. But
who they are? They're the same assholes that make major product announcements at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Plausibly, yeah. Oh, you got boned by who? I forget who it was that you got stiffed by on the news of this week or last week.
No, last week I got screwed by a couple of folks. This week I'm going to sing the praises of David Heath here for a minute, because he sent me the announcement first thing for Tuesday morning that the thing was going to launch Tuesday afternoon so that we could time the Tuesday Newsday release to come out after that launch had started. That way,
in fairness to all the people who do this to you, I sent you the list of nominees like as soon as I sent out the list of nominees, and then a week later you're like texting me, "Hey, where's that list of nominees?" So I'm like, I sent it. Did I not send it to you? I'm sitting there looking at the emails. I'm like, I sent it to him. It doesn't matter. I don't know what's he talking about.
Do you guys need some time alone? Should we talk this out?
I might need some time outside.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying.
So why solar year?
Good question. There's no,
I've never seen that
fundamental reason for that, right? Oh, does it say solar year in the existing charter?
Yes, I'm not kidding. I'm sitting here editing your draft.
So first of all, we're gonna model the new charter after the Constitution of 1795, which I think you'll be pleased with.
I will be.
But also, I insist that we use the sidereal year instead.
But you're going to go with government fiscal year.
Yeah, I was like, solar? What? Okay, go on.
So no, don't ask me, man. I a lot of that language is an attempt to address some of the things that came up as criticisms.
No, look,
and I get that.
I write them for a living, and I teach people. If you see a weird provision in a law, it means somebody has jacked around with this law.
I'm totally putting you to work with this, by the way.
But I want to know who is jacking around with what, such that you felt the need to point out it's the solar year.
I cannot provide the provenance of that.
I on the other hand, I think sidereal year is completely acceptable.
Why not?
We will carry on.
Yeah. In fact, I think we should just ditch 2021 and start using the Jewish calendar. Why not?
Oh, well,
the numbers are bigger. I mean, the bigger is better, right?
It seems dramatic. It seems no. I am completely a lunar guy. Come on now.
You can use the Jewish calendar, but you have to refer to the years based on the Chinese zodiac.
There you go.
No, besides, you're missing the obvious joke. I mean, I'm going to demand that it be done according to the revolutionary calendar.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. I just listened to the podcast episode about the revolutionary calendar, too.
There you go.
I should have thought.
So, we're talking, this will only be eligible if it is submitted and released to the public before the 18th Brumaire.
We should definitely at least do that for the Napoleonic category.
Yes, that's that.
Why has nobody done a game on 18 Brumaire?
I think it's funny you say this, because I have had a very brief conversation with a couple of folks involved in the coin field. There is 100% beyond any doubt a coin game lurking under the events of the French Revolution.
I'd buy it. I'll tell you right now, I'd buy it. I want Mike Wilder to do the French Revolution game using Marc Poupetré's system. Actually,
the Gironde versus the Jacobins,
the Canadians against the other Canadians. I think that's what they're called in the game. These Canadians versus those Canadians.
Well, I've actually written a review for a website with which, Brand, you are familiar, of Treason, that the card game of the trial of Riel's trial in Canada. And yeah, it's Canadians versus Canadians, which is really amusing.
So, Gary, I'm going to throw out one last tough question here as we start to wind this alternately amusing and maddening discussion as we start to wind this down. And Jim will probably see where I'm going as I start to ask the question here. But you mentioned earlier some of those other awards that are out there. The History on the Table pod guys have started one. We've got the Zenobia Award, which
the Histies is what I'm calling them, which is not very flattering, but that's what stuck
probably
in my head.
It makes it sound like I'm asthmatic.
Yes.
Yeah. We've got the Zenobia Awards, which is more of a game off than anything. We've got the Summit Award. We've got all these different ones that are floating around out there. A couple of the ones we were trying to do, we were going to try and keep it simple, but I think the History on the Table guys, the Hissies, have sort of come to where we were already trying to plant the flag, and that's fine. Somebody else wants to do the work. I don't have to, so that's good. Some of the categories that currently exist and some of the ones that we've sort of kicked around in some of the discussions here, there's already guys out there doing computer game awards. There's already guys out there doing awards for miniature war games. There's already guys out there doing awards for some other things, and not the recent ones of, hey, somebody should really do this and somebody starts a new thing, but stuff that's been around. Jim, how long have the guys at Little War's been giving out awards at this
2
point?
years. This is they're heading into their third.
Yeah.
I thought they've been doing them longer than that.
No, Caesars.
That's about right.
They've had 2 Caesars. They're getting ready to spool up to a third.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't really watch, honestly, I don't watch their channel, excellent though it is, because I'm not a miniatures guy.
Yeah.
But I have felt it incumbent upon myself to kind of keep up with how they do the Caesars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
no,
but we've had other folks that have done awards like this over the years. Again, discounting the Origins Awards, because at this point, as good as they might have been 35 years ago, they're utter crap now, and that's fine. We'll move on. But is there a need for the Charlies to include a miniatures war game campaign category as the prestige award when there's already somebody out there doing that the miniatures war gamers actually pay attention to?
Boy,
is there
that's a great
need for
question.
a computer war game category if there's already somebody out there doing computer war game categories that people pay attention to as the prestige award for that area?
So I would venture to say that the tabletop board games and computer war games, or tabletop war games and computer war games, have some overlap in their audience, right? But there are different spaces, all right? And so while traditionally there has been a computer game category for the Charlies, because there are other awards out there for those other things already, I think the Charlies are fine and probably better to let those other awards handle those things. I think it's healthy for the field to have multiple awards, right? And every award's different, right? The historical board game awards are the historical board game awards. They are not the war game awards. The Zenobia Award has its own definition. The Summit Award has whatever definition Harold has arrived at. And the Caesars are doing basically social media awards oriented towards miniatures, right? Yeah. And that's all fine. There's surprisingly, even with the historical board game awards, on whose committee I am, I'm on the committee.
Ditto.
There's a lot less overlap here than you'd think when you look at their categories versus the Charles S. Roberts Awards categories. The biggest thing, though, is that the Charles S. Roberts Awards are named after Charles S. Roberts.
Yeah.
Right. And that gives them a weight and a sort of tone that, that might make the purview of the CSR awards kind of narrow, but it also gives them a sort of gravitas that maybe those other awards aren't going to have, but they may have more reach because their purview is broader than the CSR. So I think it's completely normal and natural. I mean, just look at like sci-fi literature. It's got like 4 different awards, right? I'm not talking even about the horror people.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 or 4 or 5 maybe different awards for that. There's probably more than that when you start talking about what they're doing in Europe. Movies have the Oscars and the Golden Globes and the People's Choice Awards and whatever the other ones are. And so there's, and music alone. I mean, every genre of music has its own awards, right? That's why I'm shocked, I tell you.
That's just with the Grammys, every
right,
category.
To find out that Jim has not launched his own Napoleonic Awards, which, okay, if somebody wants to do an award specifically for Napoleonics.
Cool. No, actually, would you believe the Napoleonic Wargamer on YouTube, great guy, funny guy, watch him religiously. He is launching this year, first time, the Bonies.
Is this Eric?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll be asking him about that when I talk to him on Thursday.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No. I think his name is Eric. He's a minis gamer.
Oh, I'm talking about Eric, the Labatt.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
Right.
That's funny that they're both named Eric. Yeah, no, he is.
No, not at all. Totally not funny.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
It's not a laughing matter.
Yeah, no, he is a British gentleman who runs a program. He is the Napoleonic Wargamer on YouTube, got lots of subscribers, and he has launched the Bonies for
great, right?
For Napoleonic miniatures war games. Very specific, very narrow. He's got a total of 3 categories. I love it.
And the Historical Board Game Awards also have 3 categories, and their categories might change. Well, it would be nice to only have to deal with 3 categories, right? Yeah. But the fact is that I don't think the Charles S. Roberts Awards can do that, because there's such a long history of the sort of taxonomic period categories. Yeah. And I don't think we can throw that out. I think there's enough games to populate all the different fields, and there's some massaging that should be done. But
our original intent was to start with 3 and then to see where we would grow from there. Our 3, only one of them was a straight up game category. There was going to be a game of the year. There's going to be a graphic presentation, best graphic presentation for the year, and then a rookie of the year. Best new entrant into the design or graphics field within wargaming. Those are the only 3 we were going to start with, and then we were going to expand the footprint from there after a couple of years and figure out what made sense. Jim, I'm talking about a couple of the different kinds of games that are out there, but the other awards that are out there. But part of the reason I'm asking the question about sort of how wide the Charlie should cast the net, you didn't mean to give me an asthma attack with some of the questions about why can't miniatures games be eligible for the computer game category. But look, anybody that watches Saturday Night Fights or like anything else on your YouTube channel, that's a valid question, that you are playing miniatures games on a computer with people in 7 different time zones all at once.
And I think that verbiage is a response to that question.
Yeah, they may very well be. The other thing that Jim brought up was sort of the difference between that above the line versus below the line in terms of the miniatures rule sets. We've already seen that distinction in the Charles S. Roberts
Games Workshop versus Man with Typewriter.
Well, But that's, quite frankly, that's the distinction that was made already in the Charles S. Roberts Awards between professional versus amateur magazines.
Yeah, but then we had the problem. Yes, that's true. But de facto, what that ended up reflecting is magazines with games in them versus magazines without games in them.
Yes.
Regardless of how the categories were actually described. And that's a question that we need to address too.
Yeah. And honestly, the way it functionally happened for several years before it evolved into that was basically magazines that came off a printing press versus magazines that were, photocopied at your local Kinko's and mailed out to, 20 friends.
Yeah, but nobody's doing that anymore, right?
No.
It's either a PDF magazine, of which there are several, or it's a professionally printed magazine. And print on demand counts as professionally printed. Do we want to say that? I think there's somewhere in there might be an exclusion for print on demand, which is
I think that's a huge different discussion.
Oh, it is.
Personally, I think print is dead, because even WSS has admitted it's going to have to stop.
War Games, Soldiers, and Strategy.
That's it.
Oh, that was a physical magazine? Oh, yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yes. And a glorious one. A glorious
War Games Illustrated still around, right?
Barely. Yeah, but barely. Okay. That's that distinction about, the idea that the only people that are going to send us print things is Compass Games when they send us their annual sales flyer.
And Decision.
And bless them, yeah.
I get a physical mail from Decision as well. I mean, I don't know if print is dead, but it's definitely in an iron lung.
Yeah, no, it's we'll have a couple left. But when you're talking about a competition, but the more I think about this and the more you're both making your points, I ain't gonna be me making the decision, but I'd be cutting miniatures games right out. I honestly think there's a number of things that I'm looking at this category list going, we've got a space. It's the Caesars now.
And that's true. And you know what?
And they're doing a great job.
And they are. And at some level, I think I personally, anyway, am pretty fine with letting them have that corner of the space.
So Jim, what do you do?
Let's all be good at what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? And if that means you guys do this and you guys do this and you folks do this, great, do it. No problem.
So Jim, what do you do with Memoir 44?
Burn it.
No, I mean, CC. Let's talk about CNC tricolor, right? You're never going to see never. I just said something stupid. I'm sorry. You're unlikely to see something like Memoir 44 again from Richard Borg. You're going to see a CNC the next iteration. It's going to be blocks. It's going to be hexes. It's going to be a war game. It's going to be
the War of Jenkins Ear.
War of Jenkins Ear. It's going to be eligible for the Charlies. Merely throwing a couple of toys on the board, as wonderful as they are, I love it. I play it.
I just bought Commands and Colors Tricorn,
and it's a great game, isn't it? Yeah, and have you cracked the shrink? Have you noticed how wonderful Compass is doing with that, and how much GMT should freaking let Napoleonics go so they can be that nice?
So let me point out that I've been home for about 28 hours so far from Compass Expo.
I have no sense of self-control.
I have still not gotten all the shrink wrap torn off the boxes, and I don't let this stuff sit around in the shrink. No, I bought that much stuff.
Yeah, Tricorn was one of the games we had on the table at CNC. Tricorn is one of the ones we had on the table at Mace. That BB Mike was running those events, and we got folks sat down and played with him at a non-war game convention.
Great looking game, all that stuff. So no, I would very comfortably take Richard Borg's magnum opus, which has certainly kept him in party hats and beer, and Richard Borg's,
or at least beer nuts.
Beer nuts, yeah. When my beer nuts turn to cotton balls, I'll be coming home to you. That piece I would happily ship over if people were willing to vote for it to the Charlies, because I think that's worth it.
Yeah.
Well, and those are legitimate questions though. Is like, how do you, if you have a Memoir 44 and a Commands and Colors Tricorn, and one qualifies for the Charlies and one doesn't, why? I mean, we'd have to be able, because that's a similar question is going to come up. We have to be able to address that question.
Yep.
I don't even know what the answer is. I hadn't even thought of that. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. Actually, that was Brant's fault.
Yeah,
of course.
It's going to get blamed on me anyway.
Well, that's true.
So, Gary, me asking the questions about sort of why not let some of those categories go was not intended to put you on the spot and, damn it, we need an answer on this broadcast. Like, that was not.
Oh, no, frankly, I think we need to let some of those categories go.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to dodge the question. I was just making the additional point of there's other spaces that we can do. There are categories that I think we ought to add, for that matter. Your frou fantasy thing, for example, with NATO and the Warsaw Pact. We should have a special fantasy category for it. So
his imaginations campaign.
Well, so that reads you'll have noticed, right, that the modern category, it's modern or post World War II hypothetical. Well, why? I mean, does like if we had a alternate history American Revolution, why would that not qualify for that category? Where would that fit? I don't know. So why? And all four nominees this year are in fact post World War II hypothetical games.
Yeah.
They're all Cold War. Well, they're not all Cold War gone hot. Indian Ocean region is actual modern conflict.
Yeah. And I think just by dint of the march of history, I think you're going to get really close here in a couple of years to having to separate Cold War from modern. And I think you're going to have a cutoff with sort of fall of the Soviet Union.
Maybe.
Of things before that versus things after that, simply because there's been way too much shooting since 1989 and a whole lot of games in those spaces. That
a fair number, yeah. We got to think about how many released in any given year. Topics. Yeah, there's no real shortage of that. Of course, with Modern War Magazine gone, there'll be a little bit less of that now. But still,
I think you're starting to see more games come out over the global war on terror conflicts.
Sure.
To say nothing of what you're going to start seeing in 5 years of the Russia-Ukraine conflict stuff blowing up. And God knows what the Chinese are going to start shooting at any moment. So I think you're just by sheer weight of years and the fact that history marches on, at a certain point, you're going to have to draw a line at post-World War II to where things are going to have to start getting separated, because the Korean War probably doesn't necessarily belong in the same category with, U.S. and Afghanistan in the 2000s.
Sure.
So
those are decisions that I expect. Let me put it this way. We're going to come up with a category list for 2022 that I expect to look different than the 2021 category list, right? And I think it should be smaller, but we'll see where we land on those decisions. In any case, it's going to be different. But I expect, as part of the process, that we will revisit that question every year, that we will ask the question, 2025, January 2025 comes around, we start looking at awards year 2024, and we look at, okay, do our category, based on what we see this year, for the previous year, do the categories still make sense? And we'll have to continually revisit that. And hopefully we can make them stable, as stable as possible. But if we don't, if they can't be perfectly stable, we'll have to make changes sooner or later.
Yeah.
And that includes adding categories too, right? That I expect to add categories sooner or later, maybe sooner, right? I mean, we're at the me jotting notes down stage, right? I have a short list of potential new categories that I think maybe we can talk about.
Yeah, hypothetical shit that Gary thinks is a fantasy game.
Yeah, exactly. We could put Harry Potter and 1985 Sacred Oil in that,
and Mississippi Banzai.
Right, which I saw on a table at Compass Expo, by the way.
That's hilarious, actually. So are you going to throw Case Geld in there also?
Oh, sure. Why not?
Because it's a Thai Bomba game?
Well, yeah. I mean, any Thai Bomba game automatically gets put in the Narnia category.
Wow. I wonder if Ty even listens to that podcast.
I'm guessing not.
Probably.
That's so horrible.
He's got better things to do.
Ty, we love you and your haircut.
Again, sort of the question about where to split the categories and how to split the categories. Obviously,
we could talk for 3 hours about that, to be honest.
Oh yeah, and not going to get solved in this podcast, and certainly, definitely not getting messed with for this year, and probably, like you said, there's going to be some refinements for next year, and probably every year after that, and that's what you would expect. I mean, that's a sign of a healthy process that allows you to revisit previous decisions,
also known as a process.
Yeah, pretty much.
Ding, 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 ding.
So speaking of the process, I'm gonna have to process all 90 minutes of this thing at some point, and edit around Gary coughing and me laughing and Jim just being a smartass. So we'll end up with.
Well, then I won't get to say anything. What the heck?
I mean, I was hoping for more flack from Jim, to be completely honest about it. I was hoping to see Brant there cranking the crank, winding him up.
No, I'm actually now going to redo your entire charter as if it is dated to the revolutionary calendar.
Awesome. That would be awesome.
So as I've already said in the chat, the game shall have been released no later than the what is it, 11e niveaus of the year in question.
Now, I did, just as a fun experiment, this took virtually no time, I did reformat it in 3 columns with Times Roman, just so it would look like an SPI rulebook.
Nice.
But,
good.
It's probably not going to get released that way.
And I will but then we have to break it into decimals.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's got to be the case system.
Right.
Yeah. The numeric headers.
Yeah. No, I look, I'm sincere. It is harder to build than destroy. Anybody can tear down. God knows I do it enough. And you can even make it funny. Are there things I want changed in this charter? Yes, I do. Not from a policy perspective, but from a drafting perspective.
Yeah, Jim, don't spend much time on that. Okay, I'll send you some documentation.
All right.
Can we give all the awards out on 1/2-inch duochrome counters?
Yes, right.
I was thinking of giving the awards out as golden floppy disks. Actually,
that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
that'd be so awesome. I actually had to explain floppy disk to a staff member today. But what do you
mean, punch cards?
It's a 3D printing of the save icon.
I've seen. Yes, but no, I look, heck, I mean, the more I think about it, I think it is important that this gets its space and that it has a great, robust life and goes forward and it honors achievements in a space though I'm a miniatures gamer, I still care a lot about.
Okay. And with that as our last word, we're going to thank the audience for joining us here tonight. And again, this is the next to last episode of this season. We're going to wrap up this season, let everybody take a break for the holidays. We'll probably do maybe a live stream here or there over the holidays. Shortly after Christmas, we've got the AC/DC. We were just talking about that on our live show, filling in for Gary the other night. And so over MLK weekend, if you don't want to go show up at a live in-person convention and get your hugs from the guys in Baltimore at the MMP Winter Offensive, then you can hop online, hang out in your pajamas, drink your own scotch, and join us for the AC/DC. Again, it's 13 to 15 January, so MLK weekend. We're talking 2023, right? This podcast, somebody may be listening to this 2 years later. 13 to 15 January 2023 is going to be our next ACDC with plenty of online virtual gaming. Some of it done by Jim doing miniatures gaming with pixels, and
some of it real games.
and we'll see perhaps if Gary is not busy getting hugged in Baltimore that he might be coerced into running a talk show or two for us as a part of the ACDC. In the meantime, one more episode this season for everybody to look forward to, and we definitely want to thank the audience for checking out this episode of Mentioning Dispatches.
Thanks, folks.